Um, Good evening, everyone. My name is Stephen Hazel. I'm the Conservation Director at Nature Canada. And for the next hour, we'll be doing a webinar on NatureWatch 2.0. With me tonight will be Robert McClellan from Wilfrid Laurier University, who has been responsible for the ramping up, I could say, of the NatureWatch program. Maybe I will just I'd just like to wait a few minutes for some other folks to join us, and also make sure that Robert's online. So you could just hang in there for a second, and we'll start the webinar shortly.
Hi, Stephen.
Hi, Robert.
Finally.
We have. Good evening, everyone. For those of you who've just joined us, my name is Stephen Hazel. I'm Conservation Director at Nature Canada. With me, and I hope you can see him in the screen on your lower right, is Robert McClellan at Wilfrid Laurier University. For the next roughly an hour, we wanted to talk a little bit about the new NatureWatch program. So now to do that, I think the agenda that we thought about would be to have me speak for a little bit about NatureWatch, how it's evolved, etc. And I'll do that for about 10 minutes, and then I will turn it over to Robert, who we hope will be able to, using this new technology that we're still a little bit unfamiliar with. This is Google Hangout. Will walk us through the NatureWatch website to give you an understanding of how the website works, how we can record data under each of the 4 NatureWatch programs. So that will take up the bulk of the time. Now, as to we like to invite you to ask questions all through the session. I mean, the way to do that is through the you have to do it in writing through the Q&A function, which is I'm not sure exactly where it is. There it is. There, it's on the left-hand side of the screen, and there's a little blue box with Q&A written on it. So if you want to ask a question, you just click on that box. So that's how we propose to roll for the next while. Now, so I'm going to do what we call a screen share of the PowerPoint that we developed for this evening, and I'll be delivering. It'll just be 10 minutes or so, just to give you a flavor for NatureWatch. So here we are. That's the NatureWatch logo down in the bottom left-hand corner. We'll see more of that when we get to the website. I've walked through part of the agenda. So let me make this full screen. So I want to talk about what is NatureWatch exactly, who is in the NatureWatch partnership. Then briefly talk about each of the NatureWatch programs: FrogWatch, IceWatch, WormWatch, and PlantWatch. And then we will get to Robert, who will talk about how to use the website and how to enter data into the system and send it into the database that's held at University of Ottawa. And then at the end, maybe talk a little bit about how we can spread the word. So the essence of NatureWatch is really about engaging citizens in science. And more specifically, we're trying to develop a community that engages Canadians in collecting scientific information about nature in order to understand our changing environment. And so far, the 3 of the 4 NatureWatch programs really are oriented to documenting information that should give us some idea about how climate change is affecting certain parameters in the Canadian environment. Some of the new stuff that's going on with NatureWatch since Robert and the University of Ottawa have got involved is to try and take advantage of new technologies in mobile computing, wireless connectivity, social networking, and geospatial mapping tools in order to sort of democratize the data gathering, management, and interpretation processes. So originally, back in the 1990s, NatureWatch was established by Nature Canada and Environment Canada and several other groups, and it was run for 10 years or so. But then, really, I have to say that it fell into disuse and it wasn't really being used very effectively. Robert and his colleague at the University of Ottawa, Dr. Andre Viau, saw the opportunity to rebuild the NatureWatch programming and developed a partnership with the two universities plus Nature Canada and David Suzuki. This is not David Suzuki University, it's David Suzuki Foundation, DSF, whom I'm sure you're all familiar with. In terms of online advice, we've also been working with Desire to Learn. And recently, new partners have come on stream, the Toronto Zoo and the Canadian Wildlife Health Cooperative. Again, let me say that as I go through, if you want to ask questions, just use the Q&A function. So the first of the four programs, just very briefly, because Robert will talk more about this in a few minutes, is the FrogWatch program, and it's based on the notion that frogs and toads are indicator species of changes to the atmosphere, water, and to land. So by recording information about species presence and distribution, we can track changes in their population in terms of range and also temporally in terms of their calling season. So the idea is that the FrogWatch will help identify frog and toad calls to collect data on the distribution of the various frog and toad species throughout Canada, to learn about the local environment, what frogs and toads are found where, share results with similar programs, recognizing that FrogWatch is not the only citizen science program about amphibians, and also contribute to data on climate change. So that's FrogWatch. IceWatch is another really interesting program, and it's just based on recording data for freeze-up and thaw dates of lakes and rivers. So this is data that's very easy to gather, and it can really be a big help in terms of monitoring the effects of climate change. So it's a simple idea, and Robert's was instrumental in doing a similar sorts of program called RinkWatch that he may talk about when it's his turn to talk about the website. The third program is PlantWatch, and this under this program there are a number of species that have been identified, and the idea is to get citizen scientists to record flowering times for selected plants and report these dates into the database. And again, this data can be used to identify ecological and climate-related changes, and there's a web map that goes along with it. And the final program is WormWatch, and this one really isn't related to climate. It's more related to soil biodiversity, and it's really intended to get kids digging in the ground and seeing what's there, really, to get their hands dirty, in essence. But it does provide tools and resources to enable the identification and monitoring of worms. So those are the four programs. There are other big plans that Robert is much better placed to talk about than I am, but I think there's a desire to transform NatureWatch into an online hub for all sorts of environmental citizen science and volunteer geographical information initiatives. Also to be a storefront or portal to direct traffic to existing sites, and to provide solutions for researchers out there who might be interested in using citizen scientists to gather data to generate a better understanding of ecological change. As an example of that, I was talking with a colleague today with one of the river keepers groups, and this particular organization gathers data about this particular river from around the country, from around this particular watershed. And I asked her, well, what are you doing with the data? How are you managing the data? Are you having it sort of professionally managed, like through a university, such as the lab that the University of Ottawa has? And she said, oh well, hadn't quite got that far yet. But so that might be an opportunity for them to use the services that University of Ottawa has with respect to managing the data. So so I think I will stop there. We'll save the spreading the word stuff to the end, and with that, I think I will I'll turn it over to Robert, if we can make that happen.
I'm here, Stephen. I don't know how I get to be magnified on the screen, though, with this technology.
My screen.
Hello?
You're magnified on my screen, Robert.
Oh, great. The audio just cut out. So if there are any problems out there for the viewers trying to see me or hear me, just send a Q&A message to Stephen, and we'll try to figure that out. But first, let me thank you all for participating. And thank you, Nature Canada and Stephen Hazel and his team for putting this webinar together. It is a lot of fun to be collaborating with the environmental NGO sector, and in particular with Nature Canada, because Stephen didn't talk much about it, but Nature Canada has been involved with NatureWatch from its inception, going back more than 15 years ago now, when this was a partnership between Nature Canada and Environment Canada. And so it really has been my pleasure to come on board as a Johnny-come-lately just in the last few years to try and help reinvigorate the NatureWatch program. I don't know if those of you who are watching, maybe some of you have participated in NatureWatch in the past. I hope there are some people who have. I saw somebody in Alberta is tweeting about us right now, which is also fun to hear about. So what I'm going to do is to simply show you on the desktop how you can sort of navigate the NatureWatch site, which if you have used it in the past, you will see that it has changed considerably in recent months, because what we've done is we've gone back to the woodwork and rebuilt the website from the ground up. So we completely rebuilt the database that where the data is hosted, and we've completely rebuilt the user interface so that it has a more modern and easier to use look and feel. Now, I should forewarn everybody that this is still our first year with the new interface, and to be quite frank, this is our first springtime with it, and springtime is when we get the greatest amount of traffic on the website. So if there are any hiccups or growing pains, please let us know as you're using the new website, and we'll fix it. Just one thing, I'm going to be showing you on a desktop, but I'll just get out my my smartphone here and I'll hold it up to the camera, and this is all mobile friendly now. So I think you can see there the NatureWatch logo, and you can see all the modules are also available to work off a smartphone. So the interface looks a little different on the smartphone, and that's deliberate. We want it to be convenient for the small screens, with the idea that you no longer need to, when you're out there looking for frogs or looking for flowering plants out in the yard or out in the park, to remember to come back to your desktop computer and input the data. Now you can do it on your phone while you're out in the field. So that's kind of fun too. But I'm going to show you on the desktop version. So hopefully the technology works for me as well as it did for Stephen. And Stephen will let me know. Can you see NatureWatch on your screen, Stephen?
Yes, we're good.
Excellent. So this is the NatureWatch homepage. Now I have logged in already using my profile. If you've joined NatureWatch already, you can log in and do it along with me. You don't need to share any personal data to create a NatureWatch account, user account. All you need to do is to submit your email address and a password. You'll get an email notification to activate your account. But other than that, we're not collecting any personal data about users. You're at that point, you have full access to the website to submit observations and things like that. So we're here on the NatureWatch homepage right now, where you can see on your screen the 4 key watches: Frog Watch, Plant Watch, Ice Watch, and Worm Watch. And I'll actually work my way through these in that order. The other thing we've done, if you scroll down below the fold here, is that we just have some blog postings here, and we will update these from time to time so that we can sort of let users know, new things that we've learned from the data and things like that. And I should mention also that we have a master's student at the University of Ottawa right now who's going through old NatureWatch data and testing it to see what different things we can tell from it. So let me start by taking us over to Frog Watch, which is the one module that I like to use a lot because my daughter and I have fun identifying frogs and putting the data in on this module. This is on this side of the screen here, this is our Twitter feed. And if you do want to follow us on Twitter, if you look for NatureWatch or en français, Attention Nature, you will find us. And I should have mentioned that if there are any users out there who'd like me to do a little bit of presentation in French, just send Stephen a message by Q&A, and I will do so. So this is the Frog Watch page here. You can see at the top menu you've got a how-to guide to identify frogs that includes sort of like a field guide to identifying frogs, some tips on how to go about looking for frogs, and some FAQs as well. Submit observations over here. View results, and we'll come to that later, where we can actually download some maps of past data, past observations. And then over here in the resources, we'll have some links to some other publications that are out there as well. So I'll start with the how-to guide and identifying frogs right here. And so what this does is it will teach you, in case you're not an expert on frogs, it'll give you pictures and audio of frog calls so that you can identify frogs. So I'm in Ontario right now, so I will choose my my province here in Ontario, and this will give me a list of frogs that are commonly found here in Ontario. And so you can see if you scroll down here, American toad, Fowler's toad, spring peepers, which will be one of the earliest ones to come out. Well, let's start with the spring peeper. So sometime in the next few weeks we'll start to hear this particular frog in Ontario. And so if I click on the Learn More About the Spring Peeper, I'll get a blown up picture of a spring peeper and a description of it, what to look for, and I'll even get an audio file of the call. And so we can get that for all of the main frog species that we'll find in Canada, according to province. And so that's just one example of how you can use it, the how-to guide. And then on the field training under the same menu, there's a little bit more information on how you can learn to identify frog calls, a little bit more information about amphibians as well. You don't have to go through those, but they're kind of fun too. So let's imagine that I actually saw a spring peeper. So I will click on the Submit Observations, and it's the same look and feel for each one of the modules, whether you're using Frog Watch or Plant Watch or Ice Watch or Worm Watch. And so you have different options for, so if you wanted to change between modules, you can do so here. We're using Frog Watch. You can use your current location. Unfortunately, I'm not able to do that where I am right now in this room. I won't get a GPS signal. But I can do so, and it's very easy to do off of your phone. You can also save your favorite location. So if you have a pond in your backyard, you can use a saved location. And so as you go through it, To submit your FrogWatch observations, it's very simple to do so. My daughter, whose birthday it is today and just turned 10, she's able to do so. You enter the date of your observation, and then you just choose the species from the drop-down menu. So we saw a spring peeper, so we'll go down there, we'll highlight spring peeper. In terms of abundance, you have a few options on what you can do. So you saw the frog but didn't hear it. You didn't see any. This would be in the case where you're actually deliberately out looking for frogs or toads. You could actually count frogs. That would be interesting to do with spring peepers, because when you get one, you usually get a whole bunch. And then you get different options here as well. A full course would be if you're in a wetland complex, for example, and there's spring peepers all around you, so you would do that. And if you want to, if you have a smartphone with you, you can add the temperature, the air temperature, which is helpful information, especially because frogs are more likely to be active in certain temperature ranges. And if you happen to have a photo, that's great, and you can upload it. Again, this is really great if you're working from a smartphone. And if you want to add any optional notes to it, you do so. You just fill in the field here. And so this is just a text field here, as you can see. And then when you're ready to go, you click Submit Your Observation. I won't do that because obviously I'm not actually observing a frog, and I don't want to put a false observation into the database. But as you can see, it's pretty user-friendly to do so. So that's the FrogWatch. What I'll just do is quickly go over to a couple of the other watches. So we'll next go to the PlantWatch, which is also one that's going to become active in the next few weeks. And so I'll just click on PlantWatch. And PlantWatch is very active in certain provinces because, oh, I should have mentioned, sorry, with the FrogWatch here in Ontario, we have a provincial coordinator. The Toronto Zoo is very active through its Adopt a Pond program and trying to promote the use of FrogWatch here in Ontario. We don't necessarily have provincial coordinators in every province for FrogWatch. In PlantWatch, we also have provincial coordinators that are actively recruiting people to watch for flowering plants. And so the rationale behind PlantWatch is we want to figure out when plants are actually flowering, because the timing of the flowering gives us indications about the onset of spring conditions. And so this has been a very interesting module for us in that there's a scientist out at the University of Alberta who has been publishing a lot of this data recently. She's been involved with the project since its onset, and her name is Elizabeth Beaubien, and she's had some really interesting scientific journal studies come out of this particular module. So with PlantWatch, again, under the how-to guide, you have identifying plants, plant descriptions. It's a little bit more engaged than frogs, because obviously with a frog you either recognize the species or you don't. Here we have a little bit more information to help the novice user sort of try to identify the different basic things you use when you're trying to identify plants. So I'm just scrolling down through that. And then there are particular plants that we actually want to track. And so again, what you do, again, the modules look very similar as you go through them. So here I'm in Ontario again, so I'll choose the plants that we're interested in monitoring here in Ontario. So we've got aspen poplar here, bearberry, lily, bunchberry, chokecherry, coltsfoot, purple lilac. This is a particular type of lilac we want to study. Dandelion, which is great for getting kids involved because it's hard not to be able to identify a dandelion. Labrador tea, a very common wetland species. Mayflowers. Red maple's one. In fact, I've got one in my backyard, so I think I'll click on red maple because I'll be watching for that to flower in coming weeks. And so here's some more information about the red maple, and it's got some pictures, for example, what it looks like when it first blooms, for example, in case you want to get a better detailed photo of it. So again, it's sort of like an online field guide. And some more information, in fact, probably more information than you'll want about red maple. And you also see here you've got a map of its distribution here in Canada. So let's say in my backyard I've noticed that my red maple has started to show this flower that is very common to that plant. Then again, what I'll do is I'll go to submit observations. I'm in the plant watch already. Again, I can select my location, either using my current location, using my GPS from my phone, or I can add a location as well. I add the date. Oops, that was a bit of a mistake. I click the back button there. So I put in my species again from the drop-down menu. There's our red maple. And I can talk about whether it's the first bloom, whether the blooms are off of it and the leaves are starting to appear on the tree, or if it's in mid-bloom. In other words, I didn't notice the very first bloom, but it is clearly well blossoming there. And there's more information on the specific details as to what is meant by those event terms. And then just some information about the tree. Because obviously if the tree, in this case the red maple, is in a different sort of setting, it may flower earlier than others of the same species. So if it's in a bright and sunny area, it may flower a few days ahead of a similar red maple that's in a more partially shaded area. And it also asks for a little bit of topographical information as well. Again, these sort of give us an information about the microclimate. So a tree that is on a southern exposure with a nice slope may flower a little bit earlier than one that is, say, on flatland in a neighboring location. And again, you can also upload a photo if you wish to. You can put in some notes, and you can submit your observations. So that's the Plant Watch one as well. And both Frog Watch and Plant Watch we hope to get going very quickly. Out in British Columbia, people might already be experiencing flowers and frogs in nature, and we're extremely jealous of them because they can do so. But that's how we would do those two modules here east of the Rockies, and we're hoping to start seeing observations in the coming weeks. And those two, again, both the frogs and the plants give us a couple important pieces of scientific information. One is the onset of spring conditions. The other thing about Plant Watch is that we can check the distribution of species. So if we start to see southern flowering plants starting to move their range northwards, that's also important information. In the case of Frog Watch, what we're also interested in is the distribution of species, the presence-absence of species in particular waterways. And I know that the Toronto Zoo will take Frog Watch data, and they will actually share that with the Ministry of Transport here in Ontario and use it to inform the Ministry of Transport where they ought to be putting road signs up to inform motorists of hazards of amphibians being on the roadways at certain times of the year. So it's very useful information for conservation purposes as well. Stephen, are there any questions so far?
No, there aren't. Okay. We'd love to have questions.
Okie doke. Well, while we put out that call, I'll just quickly click on Ice Watch. We've sort of missed the boat on this one, although there may be people in more northern parts of Canada who still have contiguous ice coverage right across their waterways near them, in which case they could enter an ice off date for Ice Watch. So essentially what Ice Watch wants to do is that it wants to know when natural water bodies, when ice forms continuously across open water and when it melts in the springtime. And so again, there's a how-to guide just like all the other modules. And so it tells you here how to make an observation. So in this case, the observation station, as you can see here or here, is where you're standing looking out over an open water body where you can see to the opposite side. So this wouldn't work so well, for example, on Lake Huron, but it would work well on a smaller lake or river. And you're looking right across a particular field of view. And what we typically tell people to do is look for landmarks on the opposite shore. And so we select an observation area, and what we want to do is to see ice completely covering the observation area that we've selected. So there's some nice images of what an observation area looks like. And obviously this is open water as well. So what we want to do is to chart the day that the water freezes directly across the observation area. So using this photo here, when the ice stretches all the way across, that's the ice on date, and when it opens up again in the springtime, that is the ice off date. So we've got our water body here. There's a little bit of field training in this one. Mostly it points to a few important things, such as to don't walk out on the ice yourself, but it gives you some tips on how to select a water body that you can observe for Ice Watch. And then again, like the other ones, you go to the Submit Observations module. Again, you put in the location, whether it's your current location or whether you're adding a new one. And then what you can do is submit your Ice Watch observation. And on the drop-down menu here, we want ice on, ice off, or in the case that no ice actually forms on an open water body where you would normally expect it to do so, you would put on no ice at all. And I think across most of Canada in this winter, we actually had ice everywhere you would expect it to be, at least here east of the Rockies. So, and then again, you can add a photograph here if you want to, and some notes. And again, you click on Submit Observation when you're ready to do so. I'll just move quickly then to the last module, which is the Worm Watch module. Now, the first three modules are all designed to help tell researchers and the general public about certain conditions that are changing in nature. Worm Watch is a bit different. It was designed mainly to engage people, especially kids, and often kids working in school groups or clubs like the Girl Guides or the Boy Scouts, to practice getting involved with nature and to get them just simply used to doing things like trying to identify plant or animal species and to recording the data as well. It doesn't mean to say that anybody who wants to just simply go ahead and do it themselves can't do it as well. So there's a picture of my hand with a worm in it. You can see here we're encouraging kids to get themselves involved with it. And what we have found in the past is that grade 3, 4, 5 boys absolutely adore digging up the schoolyard and digging out worms and thinking that that's educational, because they do, and it is educational, and it's a heck of a lot of fun too. So it gives you a little bit of information on why we would monitor earthworms. There's surprisingly very little information about earthworms here in Canada. They're probably an they're probably an invasive species. In other words, they weren't here before European contact. They were probably brought over by European settlers, and they have spread their way across Canada. The province of Alberta has a very detailed earthworm monitoring program that they're involved with, and they consider earthworms to be an invasive species in Alberta. But anyhow, here's again the same menu up top, how to identify earthworms, and it's surprisingly complicated actually, which is, makes it a lot of fun for students again, because they're encouraged to handle them and to look at them. So there's a lot of information here, including a taxonomic key on how to describe earthworms, looking at, for example, striped versus non-striped earthworms, the ventral part of the earthworm. There's some more pictures of them, and there's different protocols that you can use for identifying earthworms. And so we encourage teachers to have a look through this and select a little program that works best for them. I must confess I'm not a school teacher, so I've never had the opportunity of leading kids through this, but we also, like all the other species here, we have a field guide to earthworms and different things you can click on to learn about how earthworms work. Apparently this ventral view is the key thing to identifying earthworms. Some more information about earthworm anatomy. If you go through this site, you will learn more about earthworms, I tell you, than many scientists know about earthworms. So anyhow, if you do this one again, like the other modules, and you want to submit your observations, again, we're training the kids to use modules like this. You've got your dates here, your locations up here, your dates here, your sampling technique. Flip and strip means simply you're lifting up rocks or logs and looking underneath them and stripping any out of the ground that are trying to hide on you before they get away. And then there's two other methods as well, which are typically involve disturbing the soil, digging it up, and sorting through the soil to find the worms themselves. We ask for some information about the soil itself so we can have an idea of where you're looking. Look at all those different earthworm species that you can try to identify here, which is a lot of fun. And how many adult worms, how many juvenile worms, and how many worm cocoons you found in the soil. And as you can see here, I can't even pronounce the word, estivating. These are all different aspects of earthworm life cycles. And so if you actually go through this, again, it's more set up for a group activity through teachers. You can put up your favorite earthworm photos, and again, you click on observations as well. I must confess, this is one of our less popular modules because for some reason adults just don't get so excited about looking for worms the way they do looking for frogs or flowering plants or icy rivers and things like that. So what we can do then is I've gone through all the different modules on terms of how you submit observations. The last bit that I want to show you is simply looking at the data. So if we click on View Results, one of the things we can do, for example, is we can generate a map of observations. And so it's a Google map here that you'll see in front of you. And with any luck, if I click on the plus sign, it may take a little bit longer to download the data, just simply because I'm running this off of the same time as the webinar, or maybe I'm not going to see the data on this one. One of two things happening: either it's my machine, or it's simply a case where because I'm running the webinar at the same time, it does take a little time to download the results. So I'm just going to see if I can get a map of the observations on this module here from PlantWatch. And if not, hopefully the users out there who are that you will have a chance to do so. I'm not sure why the data is not loading here, but you should see a lot of little little pin marks showing where the observations have been made. And I do apologize that they're not uploading on mine, but that's something we'll have to fix. But hopefully you at home who are using it can actually. Oh, sorry, I know I haven't actually clicked on the on a module. So hopefully it'll start to load some FrogWatch data in here. There we go. There's our frog starting to pop up. I just simply forgot to activate the module I was in. So as you can see, these are past frog observations that have been made from across Canada. Here in Southern Ontario, it's hard to actually see Southern Ontario because of all the observations that have historically been added to this module. So let's see if we can get some PlantWatch ones to load. There you can see our plants starting to upload here. I'll go over to the plus sign and just zoom in a bit. And some ice watch observations. There we go. We've got a lot that are loading for BC and west. They seem to be loading from west to east here in this module for some reason. We do have lots in the east, they're just not loading up at the moment. But let's go on to WormWatch, and then you can see some out here as well. I think it's just a case of my Google map is displaying the data from west to east and is sort of getting hung up a little bit once it hits the Saskatchewan border. But anyhow, you can look at some data here. Here you go. As I zoom in, you can see down in Southern Ontario coming as well.
Robert, I do have a question, and the fact that you were showing the Algonquin Adirondacks region was quite appropriate, because the question is about is from Lilith Wyatt, who works for the Algonquin Adirondacks Collaborative website 808link.org, and she is wondering if NatureWatch could be extended outside of Canada. Like, I think she's talking about the Adirondacks region of upstate New York, even though it may be outside of Nature Canada's mandate. Well, that part of it's no problem. The fact that it's outside of our mandate is not relevant. But would data be able to be recorded from, say, the Adirondacks Park in New York State?
I don't see any reason why not. Physically, there's no reason why we can't have information from outside of Canada downloaded or uploaded, sorry, to the website. obviously our mission is for Canada, but by all means, I see no reason why not, especially if it's for a special project like the A to A initiative. I think that would be a wonderful idea. And if Lilith would like to actually formally sort of set something up to do a sort of data collection exercise with that in mind, she should certainly get in touch with me through the NatureWatch website, or just contacting me at Wilfrid Laurier University. So I think that's a wonderful idea, Lilith. And the other thing you can do, so I showed you the maps. The other thing, if you go to the View Results area, is that if you want to actually get a download of the raw data, you can do that, as long as you're not using it for any nefarious purposes, like, I don't know, trying to smuggle endangered frog species out of the country or something like that. You can click on these links here and actually, well, we'll see what happens here. So you can actually download the data from this website. So essentially you choose your program, you choose the province or provinces you want and the date ranges, and it will export your data that you can then use in an Excel spreadsheet or any other spreadsheet. It's in CSV format. So that's in the View Results part of it. And for certain modules like PlantWatch, for example, where we've got publications, I mentioned, for example, that Elizabeth Beaubien, who's been using this data for quite a number of years now for scientific studies, she's actually published different articles about PlantWatch information. And in this case, there's a few provinces that actually have provincial PlantWatch newsletters, and you can click on those and download those as well. We have a couple provincial PlantWatch Facebook pages as well that we try to connect people to. And finally, I'll just stay in PlantWatch for a moment. There's some other resources as well. For example, if you're a school teacher and you actually want to teach kids about PlantWatch and build an educational module around it, we actually have a full curriculum that teachers can download. And different things that you can access as well. And the resources will vary from one watch to another. I'm just having a quick glance to see if there's anything else that I should really tell you about. I don't think so, Stephen. I think I've given a quick overview and demonstration of everything that's on there. So
that's great, Robert. Thanks so much for that. I on behalf of Lilith, Lilith wanted to express her appreciation and that she would definitely be in touch. There was a second question I had from Jennifer Rumenchik, and she says that she can't find the NatureWatch app on her phone. She hasn't said which type of phone that she's got, but perhaps do you have any hints?
Well, it's not really a dedicated app. It runs just simply off of your web browser on your phone. And we recommend something like Google Chrome or Safari to run it. We're not such big fans of Internet Explorer, but simply you just open your phone's web browser and go to naturewatch.ca, and it will run off of the web off your phone, but it is tailor-made to display on your phone properly.
Okay, Jennifer. Hopefully that will give you enough information to find the NatureWatch site on your phone. So for the time that we've got left, I mean, I thought it might be interesting to talk about how we're proposing to roll out the NatureWatch program over the course of the next few months. And Robert and you and I can both talk about that. Perhaps did you want to talk about some of the stuff that's happening at the zoo and the work that David Suzuki Foundation is doing?
Excellent. Yes, thanks, Stephen. So one of our newer partners is the Toronto Zoo, who've been doing frog watch and adopt a pond and turtle tally exercises for a number of years now. And so what we're hoping to do is to do sort of a live day in May, where the NatureWatch team will actually be in the zoo, in a real wetland, encouraging zoo visitors to take off their shoes and socks, go into the wetland, and try to observe frogs and toads, and try out the NatureWatch app. And we're doing that as sort of a physical launch or relaunch of NatureWatch, because as we mentioned earlier, we've redesigned the user interface. We're putting on a new push to get people involved, and this is where the ENGOs like Nature Canada, like David Suzuki Foundation, bring a lot of expertise that us academics don't necessarily have. And so what we're going to do is, once we do the physical event, we're also going to start a social media campaign and work with Nature Canada and its existing partners and naturalist organizations across Canada. David Suzuki Foundation has a number of different activities, like the Queen of Green and their 30 for 30 challenges. I don't know if any of the viewers of this webinar are members of DSF or followers of them, but these are activities where they use social media to try and engage Canadians in doing particular activities, and NatureWatch will be featured among those. The other thing is that we do have a Facebook page. We've just started getting that going, and a Twitter feed, but we're going to start using social media more to try and generate more visitors to the NatureWatch site. We've hired some Laurier students who are a little bit more internet hip than I am, and they are going to actively, of course, across the course of the summer, try to engage people more broadly. Because, and I'll turn it back to Stephen in just a moment, traditionally NatureWatch has been associated with the naturalist community in Canada, and they've been great champions of it. And quite frankly, the naturalists, the master gardeners across Canada, they're the ones who've been keeping it going, in spite of the sort of lack of attention that NatureWatch has received in terms of resources in recent years. And we want to reinforce our connectiveness with those groups, but we also want to spread more broadly to the wider public, and especially to engage Canadian families and youth with NatureWatch. And that's one of the reasons why we really want to increase our social media footprint, and why we wanted to make NatureWatch phone friendly, because let's face it, all the kids are out there with the phones, they're out there in the parks and the playgrounds anyhow. We want them to stop when they see a frog, open up their phone, get the NatureWatch app open and website open, identify the frog, and give us the data. So that's where we're moving towards now, and I'll turn it back to you, Stephen.
Robert, there's one more question that I think is a pretty good one from Jennifer Rumanchik. She's asking if there are protocols for each of the modules for how often citizen scientists should go out and observe for each program. For example, for Frog Watch, how many days do you do it? For how many months? How much time to spend at each site? What time of day? Are there? So the basic question is: are there protocols in place for observation for any of the modules?
In general, we just want people to use them, and if it's a one-and-done situation where it dawns upon you when you're taking a walk that you've just seen a frog, yep, we want you to make that one-and-done observation. We realize that, particularly with Nature Canada and the naturalist community, a lot of people are going on sort of scheduled or organized walks in nature, and if they want to, for example, make a dedicated effort and visit the same site periodically, or at the same time of day, or vary it, or follow more formal protocols, like, for example, the marsh monitoring protocol, which is often used for wetlands monitoring. That's fantastic, and in fact, if you're doing that, I would encourage you to use the notes in your Submit Observations module to indicate that you were following an established protocol for doing so. What we're trying to move towards is essentially a crowdsourcing model, which is the more people who are giving us observations from the more locations at the more various times of day, the better, because we can use statistical tools to try and make sure that the data tells a coherent story. So in terms of the different modules, we encourage anybody to use it as frequently or infrequently as they want. And in terms of, for example, the Plant Watch module, if you're part of a master gardening circle or some other organized group, by all means, we encourage you to establish some sort of basic protocols. But all works for us. Let's put it that way.
Good. Well, I think we can probably wind it up. I wanted to thank Robert especially for taking time to walk us through the website. I think we're really interested in getting feedback from folks who've been on the webinar as to, well, whether or not this webinar works for you, first of all, and if you've got any ideas for how we would spread the word. I certainly would be interested in learning about them, and I know Robert would as well. So please, contact me at Nature Canada, and contact Robert at Wilfrid Laurier. I think that's about it. Robert, do you have any final words?
Just simply, the whole point of Nature Canada is to get people outside and observing nature, and since they're carrying their phones with them anyhow, to use those to collect some data. And we really do rely a lot on word of mouth, and we realize that if you watch this webinar this long, we're probably preaching to the converted, but by all means, please keep spreading the word about us, and if you have any good suggestions or great ideas, please email us, use Facebook, or get in touch with us somehow, because we're hoping to grow this in coming years. But we need the support of the community, and especially the dedicated naturalists like those on the line, if we're going to do this. So and the data really is useful to researchers. So by all means, please do participate.
Well, let's wind it up there then, and I want to again thank everyone for joining us this evening for this bit of an experiment on Google Hangout. Bye for now.
Bye-bye.